Let's go back to the question paper. Okay, and the next question then. So we've got a 3-mark question here. The question says, India has set a target for its fiscal deficit of 3.3% of its GDP for the year ending March 2019. So they've said they're setting a target for fiscal deficit. Now, we don't know what the fiscal deficit was the previous year. So we're saying 3.3. So the government of India already know that because they're setting a target for fiscal deficit, they already know that tax is going to be less than government spending. They know they're going to spend more than they collect via taxation. So the question says, explain one reason why the Indian government's fiscal deficit is likely to stimulate economic growth. Now, when it says stimulate, it means increase. Okay, so we're looking for one reason why the Indian government's fiscal deficit is likely to stimulate economic growth. Now, we know because there's a fiscal deficit, government spending is higher than tax. So really the question is actually asking us, explain one reason why India's spending money or government spending is likely to stimulate economic growth. So explain one reason why government spending is likely to stimulate economic growth. Okay, so the answer I've got here, a fiscal deficit means that the government has spent more money than it has collected in taxation. The Indian government may have spent money on education. Now notice that I've used the word may here because we don't know for sure. There's nothing in the text, there's nothing here in the extract to say that they have spent money on education. So it's good to use may. Yes, of course, in reality, we know they have spent money on education, but we're not certain. So the Indian government may have spent money on education. Now, look here, I've now added a connective. I'm going to highlight the connective in pink here. As a result, in purple, as a result, the citizens of India will be more highly skilled. Okay, and they're going to be more highly skilled because the government has spent more money on education. So the quality of the education is going to be better because more money is spent on it. There'll be better teachers, better trained teachers, etc. And it means citizens are going to have more skills. And then another connective. So what? So subsequently, citizens of India may be more productive and produce better quality products. And another connective. Let's remember, we've got to answer the question. This would lead to an increase in economic growth. So I've linked it back to an increase in economic growth at the end, because if you look at the question, it says is likely to stimulate economic growth. Okay, so it's really important that you answer the question. Okay, the next question. In 2017, the tertiary sector contributed 69.3% to Germany's GDP, and the secondary sector contributed 30.1%. In comparison, the primary sector only accounted for 0.6% of GDP. So, if you just draw a little pie chart here, we know that 69, so over 50, 75, so around 69% of Germany's GDP, all of the products sold and all of the services sold by Germany fall into the secondary sector. Sorry, the tertiary sector, my apologies, the tertiary sector. 30% of the output is contributed to the secondary sector. And if you think about Germany, they are famous for manufacturing cars. Companies such as Mercedes and BMW, Audi, for an example. And then Okay, I've not really drawn this to scale, but the primary sector is the smallest sector at 0.6%. Okay, so the question says, let's just quickly revise the differences between the three sectors. The primary sector involves firms that grow and gather raw materials, so businesses such as agriculture, or industries such as agriculture, farming, fishing, for an example. The secondary sector involves firms that turn the primary products, turn the raw materials into manufactured products. So you can think about a factory, for an example. They buy primary resources and they turn it into the finished product. And then you've got the tertiary sector, which are firms that sell the finished product once they've been made, so retail shops. Alternatively, firms that deliver a service. So any business that provides a service, such as a bus company, they provide the service of taking consumers from A to B, they will fall into the tertiary sector. Okay, let's have a look and answer to this question. Explain a typical trade pattern for a developed country such as Germany. So basically we need to explain this here, why this has occurred, or why do developed economies usually have a bigger tertiary sector followed by a secondary sector, and the primary is usually the smallest sector. My answer reads, the primary sector tends to be the smallest sector in terms of contribution to GDP for developed economies, such as Germany, because it is cheaper for developed economies to import goods such as fruit and vegetables from other countries. For example, Turkey specializes in growing tomatoes and therefore are able to do so at a lower cost than Germany. This enables more people to work in the secondary and tertiary sectors. For example, Germany have become specialized at producing cars which they can export overseas. Okay, and let's have a look at the mark scheme for this particular question. Okay, so if you look there, it says developed countries such as China export valuable manufactured goods such as cars and electrical goods, and import cheaper primary products such as tea and sugar. So for an example, there's very little point. It doesn't make any economic sense for Germany to produce tea if countries such as India and Sri Lanka are able to produce tea at a cheaper cost because they have the climate and the resources to do so. It makes sense for Sri Lanka to specialise in making tea and for Germany to specialise in making cars, and then they can exchange each other's products. That's called specialisation. Okay, so have a look at the other answer possibility here. Developed countries such as Germany have moved away from the primary sector and have more developed secondary and tertiary sectors. They export finished goods to developing countries such as Bangladesh. Okay, so we've got a few possibilities there. Moving back to the exam paper, the next question I think that is the very last question for this video.